So the rise of these four countries presents potentially one of the greatest opportunities for U.S. foreign policy in the early 21st century. But at this point, it's not assured whether they will, in the end, partner with the U.S. to strengthen international order, which is why we authored this report. The idea is that the U.S. needs to more actively engage these four, and today American policies can really influence where these four countries go, that their trajectories are still in flux, and if the U.S. engages them more today, it can influence their future actions tomorrow. So the one exception is Turkey, which is a NATO ally, but taking a step back, the idea is that we really partner on issues, and it's not an alliance against any particular country, but it's a partnership on concrete issues, elements of international order. So for example, trade, finance, maritime security, nuclear nonproliferation, and human rights, and that we seek out areas where these countries, in some cases, already have started to contribute and then build out those areas where there's already a potential for cooperation. So in a sense, it's a much more ad hoc style of partnership and less institutionalized than classic American alliances. Looking at all four, the kind of greatest division in these debates is less north-south and more around should the country continue to focus mostly internally on economic development and essentially not contribute as much as it might to the international order and go forward in a sense, free ride on established powers, or should the country begin really contributing much more significant resources now to the maintenance of the international system, even though these are still relatively poor countries often based on their per capita income. And to me, that's really the heart of the debate. For these countries, do they contribute now or do they wait? And the challenge is if they wait too long, the international order on which they depend for their trade, for their prosperity, may no longer be as robust as it once was. So as you said, China is not a global swing state. China's trajectory is really one of the key areas of uncertainty in the early 21st century, whether China will accept most elements of the international order, aside from those specifically related to democracy, or whether as its power expands, it will seek to overthrow the order. And that is really a key unknown. And so from an American perspective, but also from the perspective of these global swing states, if all can come together to reinforce the existing order, that will ideally channel China's growing strength in a constructive direction. But in the worst case scenario, if China does oppose the order, it will ensure that the order is sufficiently robust to endure and continue to promote prosperity and security. So that's how I would frame this as vis-a-vis China. Absolutely. In a sense, a key way, whatever the trajectory of American power, whether the U.S. is in relative decline, as some analysts contend, whether America's predominance endures, engaging these countries, which will become more powerful regardless, is in America's self-interest. And so the ideals that these countries advance are not necessarily exactly the same, but they are much more akin to American traditions than other power centers in the world today. And just as the British perhaps looked on the United States at one stage in the 19th century and thought about some of these issues, I would say the U.S. is in a bit of the same position today. While we won't have identical interests, we are much more aligned together than we are with others.